Thank you. Roll call, please. Ms. King? Here?
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
And before we move to the next item of business, it is the expectation in the Madison City Schools building right now that we wear masks. And if you're going to be in this room, then you have to wear a mask properly, covering your mouth and your nose, unless you're at the mic speaking, and then you can take it off. Board, if you will review the agenda and take a moment, and I need a motion and a second for approval.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Ferrer and a second by Ms. Lessman. Now, we're going to make a change to the agenda. We are striking business action item A1C. Is that correct? And that's out of the consent agenda, Board. A1C will be removed from the consent agenda.
Do we need a motion?
Do we need a motion to amend the agenda, or we just need to have a motion to accept it as amended? Can we amend that? Can we amend the motion to review the agenda as it's printed in front of you with the exception of the consent agenda item A1C?
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Ferrer and a second by Ms. Lessman. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The agenda passes as amended. And now, Dr. Nichols, we'll move into our first budget hearing of the year. Ms. Williams, will you come forward?
Good evening, Board and Dr. Nichols. So I'm going to go over the 2022 budget for Madison City Schools. Empowering students for global success is our mission statement. And so here are a few state requirements for our budget hearings. We have to hold 2 public hearings. So the first one will be today. The second one is going to be on the 9th of September. And it has to be conducted at a convenient time and place, and we'll have it here in the boardroom. And it needs to be publicized as far as the date and the time of our public hearings. The purpose of our public hearings are to enhance planning processes, to make sure that we have accountability and transparency for all of our stakeholders. We want to make sure to inform the community and provide a forum for public input. And so at the very back of both of the tables in the back there's public comment forms if anybody wants to comment on the budget. So feel free to take one, and we'll definitely take your comments. The budget process. And so, to be quite honest, we're here for the kids. And so everything kind of is based on student enrollment. And so with student enrollment, after that, teachers fall in place. And we find out how many teachers we want to put in the budget. And after that is where we have our support. And so our support consists of our personnel, technology, materials and supplies that we have, operations, accounting, et cetera. The basis of our budgeting, all anticipated revenues are from the state, federal, and local fund sources, and they're all included in the budget. We have conservative estimates when we use them based on our local revenues and based on our enrollment, and that's current enrollment that we take into account. And then For Madison City Schools, we have various objectives. And so we want to maintain our pupil-teacher ratios. This has been a priority in the past, and I will talk about this in the next couple of slides about if this needs to continue to be a priority in the future. But we also, as far as objectives, we need to control our expenses. We want to identify and justify our requirements, and we want to maintain adequate fund reserves. So this slide right here is Madison City Schools student population and major construction that we've had over the last 23 years or so. This is from 1998 through 2021. And if you, this pretty much tracks our growth as well as our construction. The latest project on this slide is Journey Middle School, which will be open in 2022. And just by looking at that slide, you can tell how much growth we've had in our system. This next slide is our per pupil revenues in Alabama, our school districts. This is based on 2020 data, and it's out of 141 school districts. And so Madison City ranks at number 81. And so per pupil revenues is pretty much our total revenues, all fund sources divided by the amount of students in our schools, and that's where we get our amount. For Madison City Schools, we have $12,092 per student. And the other graphs are pretty much surrounding districts or our competitors that we kind of compete with. And so if you look at the top, Mountain Brook is the first one there, and they're ranked number 5, and they have about $15,000 per student. And then at the bottom there, Access Academy, that is a charter school, and they have about $10,000 per student. If you look at the state average for 2020 is $12,326, and so we're kind of close to the state average, but we are not above the state average. Next slide. This slide right here is the per pupil revenue breakdown by fund source. And so it's broken down by state, federal, and local revenues. And then if you look at the blue columns with the star on it, that's Madison City Schools compared to the rest of the systems in our area. And so we receive the state average for federal revenue, and then we receive above the state average for state and local revenue. This next slide is our per pupil expenditures in Alabama for the Alabama districts in 2020. And so for Madison City Schools, this is based out of 141 schools. Madison City ranks at 9,798 expenditures per student. Again, you can get your total expenditures by dividing total revenue by the number of kids in your district. And so that's how we received the 9,798 for Madison City Schools. The state average is 10,155. And then there's various rankings for other schools. And so Mountain Brook is at number 2, and they are at 14,615, whereas Limestone County is at 138 in ranking, and that is 8,650. And I did want to point out, as far as ideally, you would think revenues equal expenditures, but that's not in this case. And so all of the revenue that is received from all school districts are not for all students. And so that's the difference in these amounts. And so if you look back at it, if you look at Madison City Schools, we have $12,000 worth of revenues, but then $9,000 of expenditures. And it's the same across most of the districts. So Huntsville City, is the same, $12,000 compared to $10,000, or Limestone County is $10,000 compared to $8,000. The next slide. And then early in the presentation, I mentioned that per pupil teacher ratios was something that our system normally talks about in our budget and what we kind of go by. But Madison City Schools, we've been one of the highest classroom sizes in the state at 17 to 1, 17 kids to 1 for a while now. And while we have funds to spend on reduction of classroom sizes, we have been spending this money on other things. And so on our PowerPoint up here, it talks about strategic plan inquiries. We are working on a strategic plan. And so if this is something that the board wants to specialize in, of course, we can definitely put this in our budget for future events. Because currently we spend money on various things. We offer various things like AP courses. We offer foreign languages. We offer STEM courses. We offer summer school, after school tutoring, all school year. And we offer devices for all of our kids in the district. So this is something, if this is something that's very important, then we will need to put the money into reducing our class sizes. And so I know the superintendent is working on the strategic plan. So if that's something that we need to do, please let me know. And we'll definitely do on that, work on that. This next slide is the federal CARES money comparisons by school district. And it's just the ESSER money that was received by a few of the surrounding areas. We received money just like the rest of the school systems, but we did not receive as much as most of the surrounding areas because this is based on free and reduced numbers in the school district according to your Title I money. And so if you do look up there, various systems received a lot more. Madison City, 20 million, Huntsville City, about 60 million, and we received about 9 million, 8 million, excuse me. The progression of Madison City Schools budget in the 200s, we were a new school system and we were growing fast and we had, the funds were available. In the 2010s, we had to kind of tighten our belt a little bit when we were going through proration and various things were going on, plus growth was still there. The growth has always been there. In 2020, again, we're getting a little bit smaller. We can kind of see the bones of our pig there. If you continue going for 2022, with the 12 mil and CARES money that we've been receiving from the federal government, we're actually a fit budget. We are going in the right direction. We are in great shape. That's kind of what that is illustrating. And so for future, we want to maintain this fitness. And so we will hopefully continue this workout and with our 12 mil and any more money that the state wants to give us, we will definitely take it. There was a large influx of CARES money that came to us in 21 and 22. That money does expire in 23, but we will maintain the fitness that we have with our conservative budget and how we budget things for the future. Budget highlights. The state funding highlights, we increased enrollment by 34 to 11,513, and that's based on state numbers. We also were funded by 2 additional teachers to increase our teacher units to 728.06. And then our foundation allocation increased by $2.5 million. Local funding highlights. Locally, we are funding 31 teacher units, and that's about $2.4 million. This comparing to last year, we actually funded 43. So we're doing really well as far as not using most of our local money. Unfunded portion of pre-K was about $500,000 this year. Our average revenue growth was projected at 5%, and that was consulting with the city of Madison as well as Madison County, just to make sure that we're all on the same line. Federal funding highlight, over $9 million of CARES money that I alluded to for fiscal year 21. We're also, with all of this money, we're able to purchase much needed items like devices, more cleaning supplies, masks, and nursing supplies to combat COVID-19. We also use this money for summer school and after-school tutoring. The next slide here is the top 10 Alabama school districts with, the highest growth in 2020. And we rank at number 7 this year. We were funded $538,000, and that equates to 5.65 teacher units, because one teacher unit, right, as of last year, was $95,000. Last year, we were number 3 on the growth scale, because it was based on growth, not teacher units last year, and we actually grew 959 students. Enrollment comparisons. As far as pre-K, we've grown 32 students. From 2020, there was 277, and now we're at 309, and this is as of August 13th. As far as our K-12, this again is as of August 13th, and so we were funded 11,513, and as of August 13, we had 11,868 students. We currently are over 12,000, and so at this point, we were underfunded by 355 students, which would be around $1.5 million of local money. But then if you take into account where we currently are at over 12,000 students, it's more than the $1.5 million that we have to spend out of local money. This is the 21-22 budget for Madison City Schools. The first column, I was going to go over the general fund, and this is pretty much the daily operations. It's 80% of our salaries and benefits, and it encompasses maintenance, technology, safety, and accounting, and some of the other school functions that we have. The next column is our special revenue column, and this is our local schools money, our public funds, our federal programs, special ed, CMP, and access money that we have in Madison City Schools. The third one's the debt service, and this is our annual debt, so our principal and interest payments that we have to spend every year. So that is encompassed in that one. The next is capital projects. This is construction and renovations that we have listed in that line item there. And then for fiduciary and expendable trust, this is non-public funds at the local schools. And this is here for earmarked funds. The last column there is the total budget. And so our balance at September 30th is $83 million. We have no deficits this year. So total budgeted revenues, and this is for all of our funds. We have 47% for state revenues. We are at 11% for other revenues, for local revenues, we're at 35% in our budget this year. For federal revenues, we're at 7%. Yeah, and so this year we have a really great budget. Last year we had 46% for state revenues, and for federal revenues we're at 4%. So I mean, a lot of that is our CARES money. The next one is our total budgeted expenditures. 34% are for instructional services, which it should be. And then instructional support services is 11%, just supporting the instructional side. We have the debt services at 6%. Capital outlay at 24% of our budget expenditures. Operation and maintenance at 5%. Next slide, okay. And so this is strictly for general fund revenues. And it's broken down just for general fund. So 57% is state revenues, and local revenues were at 43% of our budget for local revenues. And so there is a breakdown. I kind of wanted to show you we have an average of about 5% that we changed or increased for this budget for this year. Our half cent is anticipated to be about 6.7 million. The 1 cent sales tax from limestone, we're anticipating 2.4 million. The 5.5 countywide should be around 6.3 million. 6.5 million. District ad valorem tax is 4.8 million. Triana, the 9% mill, should bring in about 270,000, and the 12 mil Triana should be about 660,000. Sorry, 360,000. The 12 mil should be about 10.4 million, and the TVA is 1.8 million dollars. As far as our half cent, last year we budgeted 3.8 million. This year we're anticipating 4.4 million. So it's about a 4% increase. And the next slide is the breakdown of our expenditures. About 70% of our expenditures in the general fund are for instruction, 70%. As far as operations, 7% of expenditures is for safety, utilities, grounds, and buildings. Administration, 3%. Transportation, about 4% of our expenditures this year. Our debt, about 6%. Capital transfer, we transferred about $6.5 million into capital. And then we also transferred money to lunchroom or the pass-through in this budget, about 1.4 million. And then there's 2% for other expenditures. It's 1.9 million for CIS or for technology or teacher money or textbooks. Going over the special revenue budget. For this year, the 2022, the local school public funds were 31% is for local schools in our 22 budget. We have 3% daily revenue for our DODEA grants or federal money. Special ed has 9%. Access is about 18% of our budget. Child nutrition is 33%. Okay. Our next one is our debt service slide. And so this reflects our annual debt payment, principal and interest for Madison City School Board of Education. The total debt is $267 million. billion, excuse me. Compared to last year, we actually less this year of our school debt, which is great. So in this debt service fund, 24% is dedicated to public school funds. We have our fleet renewal was about 2%, and that's dealing with transportation. And then our half-cent tax is about 19% of this budget. The next slide is the debt service fund and just the annual payment over time. If you take a look at it, the first decrease is in 2029, and that's about a 1.5 million decrease. The second decrease is in 2033, and that's about $900,000 decrease. And so our last decrease is about $5.7 million, which is at 2039, which will be great to see that decrease, just depending on if we have any more debt services in the future.
Is that counting both the Midtown and Journey in that calculation already, the financing of those?
Yes. Yeah. Isn't it? Yeah. Then, yes. So the capital projects budget, this fund is used to acquire construction for capital needs such as facilities, renovations, and existing buildings. And so the main thing, excuse me, for this budget is the new middle school that will open in 2022, the Journey Middle School. And this is from our 2019 bond money of the 12 mil. Next slide is expendable trust and the fiduciary money. So this again is this fund is made up of the local school non-public money. And so on the slide here, it's just expenditures for each of the schools that they've had. So the total is about $1.8 million this year. Last year, it was similar to that 1.82 in our last year's budget. And do we have any questions on any of the items? I know it was a lot of information.
Back on the previous slide,
Yeah.
That discovery number is correct. It's just so much less than everyone else. I was just asking.
Yes, that's normal. For this, non-public money is like school items and so on and so forth, and it just depends on the school if they want to collect the money for it. So it's really at the discretion. So last year it was about $2,000. So it's in line with what it normally is.
Board, comments, questions? Of course, Mr. Cummings and Mr. Halsey are on the Finance Committee. We all attend all the finance meetings. Those floor is open to anyone. I think it's very noteworthy that without the COVID-related funds, the ESSER funds, that yes, our own 12 mil increase has continued to grow and through this time frame grown faster than we thought it would. Thank goodness.
Yes.
But without the ESSER funds, you guys know y'all been on capital planning. In fact, we'll have capital planning tonight, and that's also Mr. Cummings and Ms. Lessman that serve on capital planning. Every year we have AC units that we need to be replaced and parking lots that need to be paved. And for the most part, those are done when something breaks because we don't have those funds to efficiently prioritize and be proactive in some of those replacements. And we have had through the COVID funds, through the federal government, we've been able to do the one-to-one initiative. We wouldn't be moving down the road on that. So there's that. So
Yes.
while we're in an affluent area with very high incomes for the most part, the school budgeting is still limited, and very thankful to the community for supporting the 12 mil, and that's allowed us to have the two schools built and also look at the additions at Bob Jones and James Clemens. But frankly, as Ms. Williams pointed out, we haven't been able to make any changes in per pupil ratio with teacher pupil ratio. And we're very grateful for the money that has come in for the changes we have been able to, the capital funds changes that we've been able to do. Those are just some of my takeaways, board, but please, if you have anything.
Yes, sir. So just to piggyback where you're saying, we're house poor, but we still maintaining quality education. We wish we had the money that Mountain Brook has, but unfortunately is where we are. But one of the key success is not just our system, it's our central office and in our accounting department that they have penny pinch everything they can to continue to be able to operate, having the revenue number 85, but we number 1. So it's amazing to see how we can make lemonade with lemons and continue to do so until strive. So thank you for everything that you guys do.
Thank you so much.
Couple of things, Board. In that ratio of 81 and expenditures, I believe I'm right, Ms. Williams can correct me, you have the ESSER funds that have inflated some schools across, districts across the state. So you've got school districts such as, say, Huntsville, that got $70 to $80 million worth of federal funds based on their free and reduced lunch that moved across that continuum to a much greater height, not only in revenues, but also then in expenditures. So more districts across Alabama that had higher free and reduced lunch gained more money than they normally would have, thereby escalating them up in the revenue and expenditure section. The other part of that that is interesting to look at is while we were budgeted from the state for 11,514 students enrolled 20 days after Labor Day last year, we ended the school year at around 11,900 students, and we're already at 12,254 this year. So even though the state has recalculated and we should earn additional funding that we normally wouldn't get, we're still way above what they will pay us for in that. So we won't recoup the 12,254 student enrollment money until next year. But if you look back 12 months ago at the 20 days after Labor Day, we're almost 1,000 students different than we were then. So, one of the reasons that we as a district have had to maintain our expenditures and keep those in check is because we have always had to be prepared for the start of school and the growth that we would have and paying for those units locally. Last year, I think we were right, we had 43 local units, which cost us about $3.2 million. And this year that we have 31 at about $2.4 million. We'll gradually gain those local units back if our enrollment keeps creeping up and averaging about 24 students a day. So you can just see from August the 13th at 11,800 to today, we've gone to 12,250 and we gain those students each day. Well, when that kicks over in an elementary school class where we try to maintain a ratio, then we have to hire a teacher and move that around. Those funds always come out of local. So whereas if your school district was, I mean to use the word stagnant, but I guess that's it. If you were steady, if you had no growth and no loss, you actually incur a better opportunity from the state and their funding than even if you lose, you actually don't get punished until the next year. You kind of got a year to reserve. Yeah. But if you grow, then you have to keep your local money in check so that you're able to address those growth units that you need. So that's where we are, which is not uncommon. Most districts across the state last year didn't see growth in enrollment. And now you're beginning to see those districts that normally had growth. We averaged 400 or 500. Now you're beginning to see that we're back at that from compared to the end of school year last year, that 400 or 500. But don't miscount it. Take it all the way back to that same date a year ago when it was around 11,500. And now we are just 250 kids away from being 1,000 above that. So.
And like you say, it's not uncommon, but the legislature actually tried to address this for us this year and help out growing school districts.
Yes.
And with the way the numbers worked out with COVID and then how we're explosively growing again, it's really not explosive. We're almost back on track to where if you took a 3-year average, we're probably right where we should be. Where Madison always is. You could argue should be or not, but yeah. So even with the legislature's help, it is still costing. We're not getting the money for the current units, and that has always been the hill we're climbing.
Because most systems did lose students during the COVID last year, but we actually gained 34. And so they did pass out stabilization money, but we didn't receive it because we didn't lose any students. So yeah, it's just how it falls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, board?
Ms. Williams, on your operating days, you mentioned we had 39 operating days. How many did the state require?
The state doesn't require any, it's the board, and it's close to 40 days.
It seemed like we was at 47 recently. Is that correct?
Yes, in our current budget, yes.
Okay,
This is for the 22 budget.
thanks.
I thought there was a state requirement on operating days. There's
It's
not.
a 1 month,
30.
yes, yes. But then on top of that, the board actually requires like the 40 days.
So unless there's anything further, that'll conclude tonight's budget hearing. That's the first of 2. And we will have at the very next meeting on September 9th, we will have our second budget hearing. And then if you receive comments and everything from the public or stakeholders or anyone else, those
Yes.
will work their way into the second budget hearing.
Yes, sir.
So we will be providing the slides to the public or the budget draft still for them to make comments. Is that what the plan is?
Yes,
We
we
can.
it's on our website.
We can.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Dr. Nichols, presentations.
We have none today, Mr. President.
All right. With no presentations, we'll move straight into public comments. Members of the public who have seen Ms. King and have registered are welcome to come forward, and they will be given 3 minutes to address the board.
Sarah Parker?
Could I just confirm really quick that you are going to hand those slides to the public?
Yes.
You are going to give them over
We'll put them up on the website.
on the website? Okay, thank you. All right, my fellow parents, guardians, and Madison City residents. On August 15th, with the approval of the Madison City Schools Board of Education, Dr. Nichols sent an email to Madison City Schools parents and guardians that should alarm our community. In the email, Dr. Nichols clarified the consequences for noncompliance of the mask mandate for students, faculty, staff, family members, and visitors. This authoritative punishment includes removal of individuals either temporarily or permanently from Madison City Schools property. This strongly implies students will be suspended or expelled from Madison City Schools for noncompliance, in essence, placing a scarlet letter on those students for the remainder of their academic careers to include college admission. In other words, our school district is prepared to ruin students' lives to enforce a mask mandate that is likely only a placebo given the outbreak of cases in the district. They are prepared to deny our children the right to an education that we fund as taxpayers. The email contained language antithetical to the principles of liberty, language such as students who will not wear masks or comply with the COVID-19 mitigation procedures will be subject to. This language reads like the laws of a totalitarian nation, not the policies of an American school district. Statements like comply and subject to are inappropriate for mask mandates and beneath our school system. While it is clear mandates are meaningless unless you assign punishment to them, Punishment such as expulsion from school is disproportionate to the infraction. It creates an environment of mental abuse and a culture where students are empowered either to bully non-compliant students or inform on them. The email also states, students who have not received an exemption but do not comply will not be allowed to remain on campus for instruction. They will be removed from the regular class and kept separate from other students. Phrases like this have a connotation of finality to them. They also imply force, as though a teacher or SRO will grab a student and physically remove them from class. This is what happens in communist regimes, not in the United States of America. Finally, the mask mandate punishments violate the Madison City Schools Code of Student Conduct, Section 5. It states, students have the right to be provided with a safe school environment conducive to learning, and that challenges the potential of each student. How can our schools be conducive to learning if students are subject to the constant fear of keeping their masks on? How can our schools be conducive to learning when students do not trust their teachers, administrators, or each other? And how can our schools be conducive to learning when students are blaming themselves in a situation they had nothing to do with and their leaders have done nothing but make it worse? This new policy puts the Madison City Schools District in a position it should never have been placed in. By the overreach of power and misguided decisions of leaders, Madison City Schools has become an enforcement entity to a mask mandate policy that cannot prove the efficacy of its own mandate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
General Patton once said, "We need to shame a coward publicly so that they can regain their personal dignity." In a cowardice act by an appointed school board, not elected by its people, you institute a mask mandate. Parent after parent, like myself, got up here. We cited facts, studies, research, evidence to say that this mask mandate is ineffective and unwarranted, and you choose to ignore us. Again, in another act of cowardice, on that immediate board meeting after that mandate that sent shockwaves through our school system, there was nothing on this agenda to address it. We only get a one-sided email from yourself dictating, as the other parent had just mentioned, this is the consequences if you don't shut up and obey. So I challenge you, Dr. Nichols, myself, and the entire school board to an open hearing and a debate for yourself. I encourage you to bring the city lawyer, the school board, your nurses, any support staff that you would need. 30 minutes, 1 hour, you set the time, you set the place, sir, and allow us parents to hear your side of the story and offer rebuttal, and you answer our questions. So my sir, with the news right here, will you accept my challenge this week at any time of your choice, your location, to have an open debate about this mask mandate? Because you truly choose to ignore it here on these board meeting agendas. We speak and our voices go unheard. So I ask, sir, will you allow our voices to be heard? Will you have a dialogue with myself and any other parents here about the torture you're putting our children through? I await your response, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Is that a yes or a no?
I don't make comments during open comments. I'll be glad to meet with any parent one-on-one that would like to meet with me.
So you'll meet one-on-one, but not publicly to answer questions?
Sir, I've heard your comment, and that's what we're here to do.
And that speaks volumes, again, on this board. And ask yourselves about the cowardice you have, that you won't hold yourself accountable to the people you're here to serve and represent. And I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you.
I normally talk about special education, and I'm going to kind of go there tonight, but in a different way. I'm talking about the dress codes. As a product of Madison City Schools, I can't tell you the amount of hours that I spent outside of assistant principals and principal's office just missing instructional time because my pants touched the ground. It wasn't even shorts, it was pants that touched the ground. So now we've got situations where hundreds of girls are being called out, stood in front of their classes, physically measured and examined in front of their peers to determine if their clothing is appropriate. So this is obviously problematic in many ways. We, saw the mission statement of Madison City Schools that we want to empower these kids for global success. But how can we empower them for global success when we're still teaching boys that their actions are the responsibility of girls? We're telling them that a girl's education is less important, that they can sit there with their, dress code violations and whatever else and watch the girls be sexualized in front of them by, men, by men that are coming in and saying, your clothing is not appropriate. And it could be, in this case, the shirts have to be a fingertips length. So that's basically a dress. So we're telling these families that they have to go buy dresses. And so I'll speak to the one woman, I'm on the board. As you know, dresses are more expensive than t-shirts. And so we're saying, go out and spend more money to basically wear a dress over your pants, because leggings are pants, whether anyone wants to accept that. They have leg holes, they're pants, and leggings cost less than jeans. So the classist system of requiring these expensive articles of clothing for girls, not for boys, is sexist and extremely classist. If you just look at how the dress code impacts people presenting as girls more than boys, you can see the differences there. But over the years, it just continues to kind of, we'll make a little progress, but the overall tone of it is still sexist in nature. Girls deserve an education. We deserve to be there just as much as anyone else. And the best way to prepare any child for future success is to teach them to be accountable for their own actions. Dress code violations should be handled discreetly. No child should be stood up in front of their peers and measured. Adults should not put their hands on children to measure the length of their shirt or their pants. It's inappropriate. It's, embarrassing. It's not something that should still be happening. And to relate it to special education in my last 20 seconds, I have a child that is autistic and cannot wear pants that button. I had to actually put into her IEP that she's allowed to wear leggings because your dress code eliminates the ability to wear tight-fitting clothing, which is leggings. That's why it was put in there. She can't wear pants that button. So I had to have that added in because that's important for her and the way that she can receive an education. So I just ask you to please review the dress codes and give our girls a chance to learn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Nichols and the school board. In the August 10th meeting and in public correspondence since, several of you emphasized the primary importance of keeping our kids at school in person. I encourage you today to lead Madison City toward much loftier goals. We didn't move to Madison for the chance to win attendance awards and participation trophies. Many have and will speak of the COVID Delta variant tonight, so I'll keep my related comments brief. Yes, of the 4 major COVID spikes, our case count is clearly second worst right now. But COVID infections followed by recoveries are not a risk we face. In fact, those are a strengthening of our community. COVID deaths are a risk we face, and those remain 4th worst out of the 4 COVID spikes nationwide. Not worth dismissing, but not worth hysterical action either. You'll choose to continue a mask mandate on our kids through this Delta variant spike. That's not a demographic at a statistically meaningful risk of COVID death. That risk is certainly not great enough to warrant your forcible removal of the masking decision from Madison families. So I'll continue to strongly disagree with the board on that decision. We entrust you with the education of our kids, and that's a big responsibility. Montgomery boasts no educational results that recommend it for leadership guidance for Madison City Schools. Huntsville City Schools' disastrous decline in the last decade doesn't recommend it for leadership guidance to Madison City either. We didn't move west in droves from Montesano for the architectural beauty of cookie-cutter Madison McMansions, not for the daily joy of fighting north-south traffic in the western part of our county. Many of us moved here for one primary reason: the excellent schools that this school board inherited. Your job as a school board is to strive for continued educational greatness. That job is too big for any other distractions. We didn't move to Madison to play doctor with the school board. I respectfully request that you stay in your swim lane, lead on education.
Thank you.
Ashley Dennis. Ashley Dennis.
Hello again. Thank you for your time. I'm not going to waste your time with statistics and data. I think we've all provided plenty of that on both sides the last meeting that we were here, and you're obviously not interested in hearing it. I would like to make a point, though, that more kids die from flu every year, and we've never put in mask mandate for flu season. Why now? My question is, when does the discussion take place? There hasn't been one. It seems like all of these decisions are just handed down on a very authoritarian and dictatorial-like attitude. It seems like that the line always gets pushed. Well, let's get through Labor Day and see how it looks at Labor Day. Well, fall break's just right around the corner. Let's get through fall break. Well, but then there's the holiday season. Let's push through the holidays. Well, we're that close to spring break. Let's just get to spring break. And then like last year, well, the end is right around the corner. Let's just finish off the school year. Where's the threshold exactly? How are you assessing this decision? Show us in good faith that you actually are assessing your decision. You stated in your weekly update that we're, quote, experiencing many positive cases in our district, while our excluded numbers are high. Without our masking procedures, they would at least be twice as high. End quote. Statements like that is just speculative at best, and it's a reckless statement. They perpetuate the destructive spirit of fear and fear-based mentality, and it's unfounded and it is not supported by any scientific evidence. Not only that, mask optional schools in our area have either the same amount of cases or lower in many situations. You said you would continually reassess the situation. So when does that happen? Statewide numbers are already trending down. Show us your reassessing. Our students have been in regular routines. They have been dressing out in PE. They are in sports-related activities together. They're in the community taking dance and art lessons, all mask optional. You could show us by only requiring masks in the hallways or in public areas. That's a start. I'm happy with that. At least show us in good faith that you are actually reassessing the situation. The health of our community is not the burden of our children to bear, and yet they are the only ones required to do so. Big government's not going to change. Big government's going to be big government. We need to make change here in our local communities, in our schools, in our churches, and in our businesses. That's where change happens. Be a change maker. Allow us the freedom and the liberty, as we said in our pledge, the individual liberty, ourselves as parents, to make our decisions for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis.
Good evening, Board. And first off, I'd like to say thanks for the budget presentation. That was great to see what you guys are doing with lower revenues in some bigger school districts and how we still maintain being number one. And I would follow that with saying that we need to be leaders in other areas too. And that mask mandate is one of those things where we need to be leading in. It needs to be dropped. The mandate does not belong anywhere in our school system. As the previous person just said, and you can see everywhere else, maskless versus mask, the trends are the same, the numbers are all the same. The masks make zero difference. And a lot of the places where they put the masks in, it's usually as everything was declining. So it didn't even, so they claim a win based on numbers that don't matter. So I just ask again for the board to look at, as you've said, that you're going to look at it come Labor Day. You look at it come Labor Day, we look at it and we get rid of it. I'm not saying we ban masks. Masks should be allowed if persons want to choose that for their students individually. But to have a blanket mandate for the entire district is unreasonable, and it's unpatriotic, it's un-American, and it goes against everything we stand for and everything we're trying to teach our kids at home. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ooh, sorry. Hello. I have lots of complaints and compliments, but for the sake of 3 minutes, I'm going to try to keep it to one each. I'm sure y'all already know that we have the best teachers in the state, and I would need a lot more than 3 minutes to brag about all of our fabulous teachers here in Madison City. But I did just want to give them a brief shout out because they are amazing. I know that this won't be a popular opinion in this room tonight, but I do want to commend you on the current masking policy. I know that a lot of kids are quarantined right now and a lot are out, but I also know that it could be a whole lot higher numbers if we did not have masks on. So the main reason I came to complain tonight is because of the dress code, specifically at the middle school level. I have a daughter at Liberty, and after the mass dress coding last week, she is scared every morning that she is wearing something inappropriate. She's 11 and doesn't even own anything inappropriate by my standards, and I think it's past time we set a review of the dress code that allows girls to be comfortable in a learning environment. While the Code of Conduct dress code doesn't actually address leggings, let alone ban them, or say anything about shirts being worn with leggings needing to be fingertip length, this is a rule that schools are enforcing, possibly under, quote, clothes should not display immodesty, unduly attract attention, or tend to cause disruption, end quote. I obviously don't think that leggings do any of those things. There is not a riot behind me, and I have on leggings tonight, and nobody seems to be disrupted or distracted by what I'm saying. One student that I know was told she can't wear athletic shorts that were fingertip length but had a slight dip that made them not fingertip length. So we're talking about 1/8 of an inch of skin. And she was told that she can't wear them for her own safety. So my question to you is, are our daughters really unsafe in your schools while wearing regular athletic shorts, or basically any shorts that are available to buy in stores these days? Am I unsafe standing here before you in a pair of leggings? If the answer is no, which I'm pretty sure it is, I think it's time we review our dress code to be less sexist, less classist, and less likely to perpetuate rape culture by telling our girls they are unsafe wearing regular clothes, and at minimum, quit enforcing it to a point where girls are disproportionately called out of class to wait in the front office for asinine infractions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I think it's Natalie White. Okay, that's fine. Okay, Brad Kim.
Good evening, members of the board. Hopefully you guys can all hear me.
Yes, sir.
All right. I find myself here again today, serving as a voice of reason for my own children and many others here in the community. I'd like to address the topic of leadership and ask, what makes a leader? Is it the purpose that they provide to those around them, or is it the guidance, direction, and support? Maybe it's the ability to make the difficult decisions when no one else can. This is why it's so important to have good leaders, especially ones that will make those difficult decisions. They're the right decisions, not the easy ones. In my experience, a good leader always considers two fundamentals. Is it in the best interest of those whom I lead? And is my responsibility rooted in the highest level of understanding? Am I an expert? Am I an expert in any of those fields? Which I choose to make those decisions, or should I find one that will aid me? I'm sure at one point or another, we've all experienced both good and bad leaders. You might even be recalling one now. So I ask you, in your experience, could you separate the good from the bad? I know I can. Did the decisions those leaders make, whether good or bad, right or wrong, play a role in shaping you today? Good leaders are selfless, placing the needs of others above their own, providing purpose, direction, and motivation. Lead from the front. So I ask now, what has changed? Nowadays, it seems our leaders are happy to flip-flop on their decisions, you included. shift responsibility, blame others, lower the standard, and even pander to foolishness. As I reflect back on this past year's chaos, one thing stands out: the impact that all leaders have at every level. The decisions that they have done have led to loss of life, whether it's COVID, riots, even our war efforts. This forced me to look inwards. Am I acting in the interests of those around me? Is what I do rooted in fact, not opinion? This is the reason for which I chose to take a stand. The days of acting like a sheep, they're gone. You're the misguided shepherd. Stop. How will you respond to this? That's my question for you tonight. Will you count yourself among those who lead well? Are you prepared to make an educated decision? Are you willing to live with the impact that that decision that you carry has? I'm just curious. I mean, we said no comment, Mr. What is that? Tim? We said no comment, yet you felt the need to comment directly to me. So I'll leave you with these facts instead. In 2019, a person was killed in a traffic accident every 9 hours and 26 minutes. Alabama has the highest death rate when it comes to firearms. This is all from the CDC. 1 in 4 COVID tests, the PRC test that everyone loves so much, returns positive, 25%. Of those 25%, technically 24.8%, only 1.78 are fatal in the state of Alabama. Even better, in our county alone, 1.28. The number of children who have died from a heat stroke in a car this year, 1. That's in the state of Alabama. The number of children who have died in the state of Alabama from COVID this year, 0. We don't address any of these problems or considerations. Better yet, 1.8% of all hospitalizations or doctor's notes are those of those are under 18 years old. That's directly from the CDC as well. So I don't understand where this mandate comes from, and it's unpatriotic. My apologies for going over time. We do things to standard, not to time. I expect you guys to lead. Lead from the front, Tim.
Good evening, board. How are you? I don't really have anything prepared. I had to stand here today to speak on behalf of my children. I have a 12-year-old and 6-year-old. We moved here about a year and a half ago from Pennsylvania, thinking we're going to come to a great state, great education. My kids are going to have a leg up. I see that, unfortunately, though, we're under the grips of a pandemic, and I'm not unaware of that. Yeah, I think that the choice to, for our kids to wear masks belong to their parents, and taking that out of my hands, I'm watching my son put a mask on at 6 years old, first year of kindergarten. Hurts. And you did that to my son. I'm not going to take it lightly. That's all I have to say.
All right, that closes public comments tonight. We're now going to move into an executive session to discuss pending litigation. We'll have a very short recess while we clear the room for executive session. We will reconvene for the action items of the meeting, but we'll take a short recess and then we'll reconvene with the executive session to discuss pending litigation, given a motion and a second and a vote. Thank you, Ms. King. Can I have a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.